Okay. Hey everybody, this is Matthew Miller. I'm the Fedora project leader, and this is a Fedora Council meeting on air. We basically, every now and then, about once a month, do a kind of a sub-project report where we have one of the various groups in Fedora that's working on something check in and tell us what's going on in their area. And so here we have the Community Action and Impact Lead, Remy DeCausemaker, giving a report on his little group called CommOps. That's the community operations. And so with that, take it away, Remy.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Miller. This is actually a fitting time for me to be doing a subject project report. Roughly 1 year ago, almost to the day, I actually began full-time working as the Community Action and Impact Lead after the semester at RIT. So definitely a lot to get through, but a great moment to sort of reflect on the past year and really the past sort of 10 months or so since October when this really started getting off the ground. So notes and questions will be taken in IRC. Link to the slide is in the chat. If you just want to drop a link to that in IRC, Matt DM, that would be good for folks who want to follow along. So first, what is CommOps? Because not everyone who's watching this might know what it is about. So this description is taken from our wiki. The TLDR is that we help to bring more heat and light to Fedora. Heat being contributors and contributions, and light being publicity and storytelling. So the real subtext here is that we don't want our contributors to have to choose between using their precious volunteer time to build things or build communities that build things. So we help to address areas of the community infrastructure by providing tools, resources, and utilities for subprojects in Fedora to increase communication and participation across the project. And what do we do? Well, you can check out the full description on the wiki. The team has done a great job of updating all of the things that we've been working on and all of the things in our toolbox. That's really a great place to check. We'll get into more of that later. But really there are sort of like 8 key areas that we really focus on. Messaging being specific marketing initiatives and outreach that coordinate across sub-projects within Fedora. Storytelling, which happens at the community blog. Badges, that is conceptualizing, designing, and administration of the Fedora badges stack. The design team has a badges lead as well, and they really are responsible for stewarding the brand. So, of course, we couldn't do what we do without the design team and badges, and we couldn't do what we do with the infrastructure team being there. So, you know, big shout out to those folks helping with the badges. But since it doesn't live in any one particular place and it spans across lots of teams, that's exactly the kind of project that CommOps wants to help with. Hubs, which is going to be the new sort of online incarnation of Fedora community, or at least a view, panopticon, if you will, upon all of the various parts and bits of Fedora. So eventually we'll be helping with the administration and tending of that. And one of our members right now, Devyani, is working as a full-time Google Summer of Code intern to help to build that. And we're really looking forward to demoing something at Flock in August. The wiki is just a massive responsibility for everyone, and that's sort of the I don't want to say legacy information architecture, but it's definitely the place where it's our community whiteboard where lots and lots of ideas get started and discussed and then eventually end up in other places. So the CommOps team has, we take requests for helping to garden the wiki and update the information that's there. A big part of what we do is culture. This includes things like onboarding new people, educating our existing contributors on different things that are happening in the project, and improving our outreach both geographically and demographically. And then metrics is also, you know, how do we know what's going on in the project? How do we know if we're having impact? So we've started over the last year accumulating a number of scripts and tools that help us to measure activity in Fedora so that we can help adjust and help the council and other decision-making bodies make decisions about where we should invest our precious time, energy, and resources in Fedora. Voting is its own special category where We are helping to run the elections, as in the nomination and communication process, as well as keeping track of where that fits into the larger release task schedules. And then miscellaneous stuff, anything that doesn't fit into one particular subproject or takes many subprojects to wrangle. So who is CommOps? Who are the people that are helping to make this happen? Well, we have members from every corner of the project, from marketing to docs to design. Lots of people are generalists. Lots of people do many different things. Some are specifically, wearing mostly one hat primarily, but we all sort of try to keep the project as a whole in mind when we are developing tools and figuring out how to communicate those different projects and initiatives. So we've got about 100 mailing list subscribers, anywhere between 50 and 70 regular members in IRC with us, 40 registered users in our FAST group with 6 more pending. We've posted over 100 posts to the COM blog, more about that later. We've opened 39 and closed 38 tickets. I think that's a total of like 72 or something like that. So we're about 50-50 on the open close, not bad. And we've had over 100 mailing list posts since we started. So let me just make sure this is the next one. Yep. So what have we been working on specifically? Well, within messaging, there's sort of 3 different specific marketing initiatives that we've been working on. So the Fedora Loves Python initiative was a collaboration between the design team, the council, the marketing team, and the infrastructure team to develop some very specific Fedora branding around our strategy and our love for the programming language of Python. And that was specifically rolled out for our sprints at PyCon, and that included a logo, a brochure, a t-shirt, stickers, and a branded Fedora badge. So it was an entire package of information around our messaging in Python. And you can check more about that on the COM blog. We posted a Fedora's Coming to PyCon post where we linked to that stuff and showed pictures. The Fedora diversity messaging is something that we've been working on a lot, or at least supporting. We recently brought on Tatika Maria Leandro as the Fedora diversity advisor. So we have been working and supporting her and the folks in her group and helping to make sure that our CommOps members know how they can contribute to bringing more people into the project and keeping the barrier to entry low and making sure that lots of people can be involved. And the newest and most engineering-y side of things is the Fedora modularity messaging. So we worked a little bit with the modularity working group to identify the onboarding steps that are needed for folks to join modularity, and then are developing a series of onboarding badges and tasks so that we can make the on-ramps to that group easier, because modularity is becoming an increasingly important part of how we deliver the distro. In the storytelling department, we've had over 107 published posts with 137 contributors, with about 38,000 views and 143 comments, and that's as of today. So this is, you can read more about those stats if you click on the links, both with monthly and our top posts, etc. But we're pretty happy. Our biggest posts have been the release announcements, I believe. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong. In Badges land, we've been doing a lot of work to create and conceptualize all of the onboarding badge series, and those will eventually be incorporated into widgets within Fedora hubs so that it is obvious where people can sort of onboard themselves. You can check out our master ticket, which includes all of the sub-tickets that link to all of the sub-projects. This is a massive ongoing thing that will continue as we move forward, but is a big part of a lot of the stuff that we've been working on. And so in the culture side of things, the Google Summer of Code program that's been a sort of personal thing that I've been working on as the org admin, but lots of the people who are in CommOps have gotten onboarded via one of the GSOC or Outreachy programs. Outreachy is a FOSS outreach program that gets diverse and inclusive audiences and underrepresented groups involved in open source projects. Fedora has participated in both rounds in the winter and spring of this year, and we have onboarded a kernel hacker actually for the summer session working with Laura Abbott. Some of our previous applicants to Outreachy include Devyani and B2502, who are both very active in both hubs and metrics. So this culture side of things has been a really significant increase for our numbers specifically, but across the project we're hoping will have a larger impact as well. We have been helping out to create all of the community architecture around the Fedora Diversity Initiative, so the wiki page, survey planning, IRC rules, code of conduct, kind of stuff. The diversity group has been helping to organize a Fedora Women's Day, which is coming up very soon, and we've helped to publish articles about the stuff that we're doing to Fedora Magazine. Pardon the formatting on this, but on the metric side of things, we've actually got Skameth, who is a current GSOC intern working with us now, has done I will share my screen and show the specific results as an example of the kinds of metrics report, but you know, between Skameth and B2502, we have some really powerful scripts and tools that are helping us to visualize the different kinds of impact and action that are happening around our events and in Fedora. So we've used these tools to develop things like the State of Fedora slide decks that myself and Matt DM were presenting at places like FOSDEM and DevNation. Going all the way back to Flock and Rochester, we actually had some one-off scripts that we were working with, and there's a lot more happening in this area that is not included on this slide, but I will show off a little bit at the end. Anything that has to do with voting is a natural fit for CommOps, so we've been helping to promote the elections, reporting the election interviews, stewarding the nomination process, and that's not just for the big project-wide elections, but also special elections and working groups and other parts of the project. So for more examples, you can just check out the COM blog, which has lots of posts there. And then just like individually, there were a number of things I think that are worth really mentioning. You know, for me personally, you know, the budget.next proposal and wrangling, which the council was heavily involved with. Thank you all for the help on that. That was an individual highlight, definitely, that, you know, may not be just CommOps, but in the future will be, you know, a crucial part of that is coordinating with ambassadors and across the channels to make sure that we're reporting on our resource investments. Outreachy and GSOC administration definitely is a big highlight. We're participating in both programs this year. GSOC after taking a year out last year, so that's very exciting. The Fedora Loves Python initiative was a really great example of cross-team collaboration that worked out to give us a strong brand and a set of tools that we can use for reaching out to specific groups in the future, with buy-in and approval from marketing, as well as the design team, ambassadors. It was across the board just a really great example of some highlightable work that was done. Flock organizing and travel has taken a lot of my time. That's more of a personal thing than a team report, though. B has done a fantastic job with her event reports, and I wish I would have gotten a link to her blog in here instead of a link to the Git repo, because she has made some great posts. And our new GSOC intern, Skameth, has already gotten a tool for gathering statistics around FedMessage based on fast usernames that can be generalized for us to use to do regular reporting, so that when next year when we come back and say what was the impact of GSOC or what was the impact of this program or these people, we have some scripts that we can run and generate some shiny graphs. You can check out more of that in his blog post. So how can we help? How can you get involved? You can join us in Pound Fedora CommOps on Freenode. You can also join our mailing list and keep up to date. And our join page particularly has lots of ways that you can dive in and specifically help. So that concludes the end of my official slides, but let me see if I can't get a link to this really awesome set of stats that were generated recently and examples of some metrics, because I think that this area of CommOps is one of the most exciting places where we can really show off some of the stuff that has been done. So let me see here. Also, did that all come through clear? I haven't heard anyone say anything yet.
Yeah, that was great. Thanks.
Okay, good. I was like, great, what if I've just been talking to a blank screen for the last, like, 10 minutes or whatever? That would be rather unfortunate.
I think it's a recorded blank screen at the very least, so that's valuable.
Good, good.
And I think you're giving us a lot of credit if you think we're beyond blank screen. So.
Right on, right on. All right, I'm going back to CommOps for a second to dig up some links. We just did an excellent graph. So I'm going to share my screen again. This time it's going to be we ran this morning, and this is, prototype, fresh off the presses, GSOC code that that we've been running, but should give you an idea of like the kinds of stuff that that CommOps is trying to do with metrics. So let me just find this council thing and do the screen share thing and pick the right screen. Okay. I think it's working. It's thinking, at least. All right. So can you folks see this? It's right now just a spreadsheet?
Yes, I see a spreadsheet. I can't read all the text, but... All
right, well, we'll make it a little bigger in a second here. The box is just really having a hard time. We're loading some big images is why. But so a common workflow for us is like, okay, what kind of impact do we get from sponsoring an event, right? So the way that we've been tracking that, and this is a workflow that was sort of pioneered by B on the CommOps team. So we have an event badge, right? So we can figure out who was awarded the event badge. So for us, that looks like 7 to 19. That's like 12 people. So like a dozen people that participated with us at the sprints. And then from those people, we can say, okay, let's query data grepper and get all of the Fed messages that surround that. So then we have a total list of activity of all the Fed messages. And then from there, we have a pipeline that will let us then generate fancy graphs that show us what percentage of what activity was in which areas of the project. So we can look at, say, like, and this stuff is like really cool. So when we look at Kushal, it's almost an even split between tickets and badges and build system stuff and planet posts and Bugzilla and Bodhi, right? And when we look over here at Ralph, over 50% of his stuff that he was working on was happening in GitHub and in the build system. So Ralph was probably doing lots of, pushing code during the hackathon. And if we look over at mine, it's a very different looking graph, right? Where, 45% of the stuff that I was doing was Pagure, which can be everything from pushing commits to tickets, some badges stuff, but also 30% of my time was in track. So I was doing a lot of things like triaging different tickets and working with the badges tracker to make sure this stuff got deployed. So and then it goes on and on, right? Like we can see each of the people's different distributions of what they've been working on, and we can look at new contributors and see what kinds of stuff they're doing. And this is just for what happened during a particular window of time. I believe it's a week. So B actually has a really good example of looking at more longitudinal data where we're saying, okay, what happened for the month surrounding this event, and then what happened for a year surrounding this event, or going back a year, what did the activity of these contributors look like as opposed to this year? So we can start to develop longitudinal understanding of, okay, well, last year when we went to FOSDEM, we gave out this many badges and we had this much activity, versus this year we gave out this many badges and this was the type of activity that we did. And she has a really great blog post of going through the specifics of that and looking at metrics in a variety of ways. Like, really, I should just be posting a link to Bee's blog because she's done an excellent job of creating a number of tools around metrics, which is really a helpful tool for us as the council to be able to get some insight into the action that has been happening and then maximizing that for impact later. So I'm going to stop the screen sharing now and maybe even turn on my video. Hey. And then if folks have questions, fire away.
So have you thought about any of the problem with kind of skewing for example, a PAG or commit from a effort or time perspective versus like a track update? Depending on the track ticket, right? That actually can be a lot of work. But like, is it really fair to say that you spent half your time in track, or did you just spend, just the events that cross the wire were half?
Right.
Those are two different things.
Yeah. This isn't a reflection of like a time clock, right? This is literally just a graph that shows the percentage of fed messages. So, even if like, only 1% of my messages were, pushing to get, there's a good chance that the time that went into creating that commit was probably larger than the rest of it. So this does not take into account, lines of code or other like deep granular things. And like, that's all great feedback, right? Like the other thing that we worry about is that fed message is really biased towards technical contributions and not as much community contributions. So we would like to be including, more badges for non-technical stuff, as well as allowing Pagure to sort of be doing more fine-grained stuff with Pagure, right? Like I might have been pushing lots of commits to Pagure. I might have been filing a lot of issues on Pagure. They're a little bit different depending, on what the activity is. And Pagure is increasingly becoming the place where I'm coordinating non-code contributions to Fedora personally for things like budget and for GSOC and for other ideation and conceptual work. So I think that doing more granular understanding and more granular like digging down into Pagure is a good thing to do. And any ideas or feedback on how we can do that better is most welcome, because right now we're like literally prototyping this stuff. Like this PyGal's chart stuff is like hot off the presses as of last week. So this is really on the edge stuff that we're doing.
Yeah, I love the stats. I've been working on some other updates of the stats that I did for Fed message based on contribution over time and kind of demographic, although not like not personal demographics, but project involvement demographics, like which part of the project works. It turns out that about 10% of the people, as measured by those Fed message commits, do about 60% of the work, about 2/3 of the work in every different area that I looked at. So that I'm guessing that probably also is a thing we can extrapolate to things that don't have Fed message attached to them, but it's kind of an interesting thing to see. And I'm also working on some stuff that tracks users over time, not individually. It goes to an aggregate stat, but just to try and say like what percentage of the work this month was done by new users and things like that.
Yeah.
So I'll collaborate with your CommOps people on that rather than doing it in a vacuum myself.
Yeah. If SkaMath is watching, he would love to help do some of that stuff for his GSOC internship,
Okay.
particularly like to get us ready for the big State of Fedora keynote at Flock. I know that the one that we did at DevNation included sort of the 3 big circles of the Venn diagram were like dist, git, and Bodhi, and wiki. And I think that FedMessage just added Zanata translations and added Bugzilla Tracker, and I think those are like 2 potentially ginormous bubbles that we could include in the Venn diagram to help capture some of the like new kinds of ways that contributors are being here and the value that Fedora is adding to FOSS in general too.
Yeah, definitely. I don't go into the weeds too much. The Zanata one didn't seem to have a username attached to it, so I need to talk to people about that. And then with Bugzilla, like AskBot and Mailing List and IRC, a couple of other things we have there, there are names, but they are generally email addresses that need to be correlated to usernames, so that's a little bit more work.
Yeah.
But anyways.
So that would be a great GSOC project to just do a map, right, where we map fast usernames to email addresses and then save that somewhere so that we can do metrics analysis, and then you don't have to.
Yeah, so that we save it somewhere that spammers don't get at.
Yes, a private repository somewhere, yes, definitely.
So a question I had is, we've been talking about this thing, this Fosco thing, which is, for people who haven't been paying attention, because it's off in a corner, so no blame to anyone who didn't notice this. For the last, it started, I guess, I don't know, at Flock like 2 years ago. I was kind of looking at the org chart of Fedora overall, and again, on the technical side, we kind of have the things, there's the steering committee, the FESCO, Fedora Engineering Steering Committee, that kind of everything goes through there. And then on the other, sort of the other side of the house, the less engineering-focused side of the house, not necessarily less technical in some ways, but not engineering, there was no sort of coordination to everything at all. So I had the idea of creating something that would be parallel that. And we have the Fedora ambassadors, but steering committee, but that is specifically focused on the ambassadors, and Christoph's been working with those people, that group. Christoph is one of those people. Anyways, my question is really, how do you see all this fitting in with a possible future Fosco, or whatever we decide to call that, or how that looks?
Sure. So Fosco was something that I put a lot of thought into when I first got here, and then have been helping to support FAMSCO from a practical standpoint in answering questions when they have them and figuring it out. I think that, for me at least, I put together some rough proposals that included like a very, very large tent for this, where potentially up to like 50 plus representatives on Fosco representing every SIG and every sub-project and every website, and just like the problem with going at that scale is that it would be difficult to make decisions. So I imagine Fosco, I'm willing to support FAMSCO in whatever iteration that they would like to see it. I'm coming from the community side of thinking a bigger tent is better, but I also know that making a governance structure that is very large is very unwieldy. We already have a hard enough time scheduling FAMSCO meetings that everyone can go to with 7 people, let alone trying to coordinate 50 or something crazy like that. So I think I boiled it down to maybe 30 or something like that, where I was like, if every working group, if every sub-project, and every giant SIG had a representative, this is what it might look like. But I think that we still have 2 weeks before the FAMSCO hands off their Fosco proposal to the council, which is supposed to be July 1st. So I would imagine whatever incarnation or plan FAMSCO has and the council has, the community operations team, because by its nature is like meant to go across these sub-projects, would help to coordinate and execute whatever that plan is.
All right, cool, thanks.
If I may just chime in here, from the fans, not much news from the FAMSCO side, but our proposals are roughly about a number of something between 7 and say 13 or maybe 15, but it should be something around, let's say 9, 10 or so. Size-wise, so I think that's the number that's reasonable to handle, and also that's a number that should include all the relevant groups that we have identified so far. We would like to restrict the focus on really outreachy positions, not engineering, not every SIG, and we are still waiting. In fact, we are still waiting for other teams like the marketing and the design team and whoever else is relevant for them to chime in. So yeah, that's why I think it's going to be smaller, and also I think we need to hurry up. It will end up on the council's plate one way or FAMSCO comes up with a nice proposal. That's what I'm working on. I'm going to push this. Yeah, or it will end up on our plate and we have to draft something. But of course, I would prefer to have everybody on board in the planning phase right from the beginning. One question to you, Remy. One thing that we have always struggled with is matrix. I mean, you are the number cruncher, you are the matrix guy, or CommOps is in charge of matrix. And you just said that our matrix are a little more to the technical side.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have also matrix on community impact? I'm thinking of average number of users on the IRC channel 24/7, or number of posts on the mailing list. We have HyperKitty. As far as I know, HyperKitty also does some statistics. I'm not sure if we have graphed it up nicely somewhere. I could also think of metrics like events we attended per year, per quarter, and so on. Do we have such numbers? Where can we find them? And if we don't have them, are there any plans to improve that?
Yes. So there's about 4 different questions there. The first one is for events. So for events, the strategy that we've been taking is creating an events badge for each event that we award to participants. That can be people who are at the FAD. It could be people who attended a conference. It could be people who visited the Fedora booth. But using badges as sort of the touchstone place where events are tracked is a good way, especially because we can generate QR codes and we can create badges admins to award stuff for people based on their email. And it also requires people to log into FAST, which helps to onboard them into the Fedora ecosystem, which is an important step because you need a FAST account to do pretty much anything in Fedora. So the limiting factor of doing that is actually the design of the badges themselves. Oftentimes if I'm attending an event, there's like a 50-50 chance that I'm creating the badge for it. So for events, at least, we have a lower barrier to entry on the Fedora design side of things, where you can use the event logo as the badge art, as long as you follow the rest of the guidelines. So we don't want to give a badge for like every single event that we ever do, or at least we don't want to file a ticket for the design team to triage for every single event that we do. What we would like to do as a CommOps team is to help conceptualize and design and deploy these badges so that the design team mostly just says, yes, you are adhering to the SKYLE guidelines that we have laid out. So that's the first question about event metrics. The second question was, what about stuff that we're not tracking yet? Where can we find out more about that? That's a really good question, and there's probably a number of places where you can drop that feedback if you have ideas. We have the wiki page itself where we talk about metrics and we talk about the toolbox. There's this thing called Fedora-stats-tools, which is a repo on GitHub where we've been stashing a lot of our metrics scripts and things like that. So maybe like filing an issue on that repository would be good. I don't know if there are plans to migrate that to Pagure or not, but we can probably mirror them without too much trouble. So that's another place where you can leave that stuff. Are you still there? I just had a window close. I'm a little worried.
Yes,
tap,
I am.
Is this thing on?
All right, cool. So the next question was, do we have any metrics on mailing lists? Within the stats tools repository, there is actually the results of some mailing list crunching that was done by me and Matt DM probably around like October-ish. There's a suite that's put out by Biturgia, which is a project that specializes in FOSS metrics. They have a repo called Mailing List Stats that we pulled out of their larger project called Grimoire. And
let me jump in on that. So that is made to work on Mailman 2 archives.
Right.
It doesn't work on Mailman 3 but you can generate a Mailman 2 archive from that. And so I started working on actually just skipping that step. And basically what it does is it takes a Mailman 2 archive and then creates a database that you can query against. And then there are a bunch of pre-done queries.
Yep.
For Mailman 3, I actually got access to Mailman 3 puts the mail in a database to begin with. So you can actually skip the very long and CPU-intensive thing of crunching all the mail and putting it into a database and just query our existing database directly. So I started working on that and then got distracted with other things, but it's on my whiteboard of stats things to do.
Right on.
But yeah, Christoph, I think that's a great way to, and since we have a lot of mailing lists on different topics, it's a great way to kind of get at least some measure of the pulse of design or some of the parts of the project that don't necessarily have Fed message associated with them.
Yeah, definitely. And again, I would also say to you, Matt DM, like if you've got stuff on your plate, on your whiteboard, like file issues on the Fedora stats repo, like we definitely want to help take that stuff off your plate.
I think there is a CommOps ticket open for that one, but it's
cool. Well, I'll add it to the agenda for tomorrow's meeting then and make sure we talk about it. Pound action.
Yeah, I remember I talked about the HyperKitty, or I gave a presentation on HyperKitty at the Bitergia Community Matrix Summit earlier this year in Brussels, and they said they're going to look into it, but as far as I know, it's not yet implemented. Maybe we could help them. Matthew, if you would like to share what you have done so far, I'd be happy to take a look at it.
What I've done so far is logged into the database server and issued some SQL commands to look at the tables. So not very useful at this point.
We'll get there.
But speaking of events, in the past, in the days before we had badges, the really simple way to query for events per year was just look for the wiki pages. Every event needs to have a wiki page. If you don't have a wiki page, you get no reimbursement. And then we had just the of course it relies on having the categories assigned correctly. So it needed to be in the category events and in the category 2016, and then you could just make a query of that.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's very basic, but it worked in the past. But unfortunately, at some point, people stopped doing event pages.
Yeah, and that's really good for capturing the ambassadors and what ambassadors were involved, but it doesn't do much to measure who the ambassadors reached at the event, which is what we're kind of trying to do with the badges. One of the things that's hard about that, though, is you have to sign up for a FAS account, and that is a bunch of jumping through hoops.
Epsilon helps with it significantly, though. We've reduced a lot of the friction thanks to Patrick's efforts in making Epsilon much better.
All right, cool.
Cool. So did that answer all of your questions, Christoph?
Yes, it did. If we had like some dashboardy thing, I know the Bitergia guys are doing these dashboards. If we have something like this, I would like to have regular numbers crunched.
So Fedora Hubs is probably the place where that dashboard goes. Maybe it's the CommOps hub itself. Maybe it's a metrics hub that we have. But I know that SCAMath is talking with the Fedora infrastructure team about putting his GSOC stats script somewhere where he can run it regularly. And that would also include a place to run our event report script regularly so that we can queue up these reports, have them automatically generated, and then embed the results either in the comm blog to start with or on Fedora Hubs when it's time. So yeah, coming soon.
Cool.
Cool. So, other questions?
I think I'm good. I know Langdon had to leave. I've got somebody coming over in about 15 minutes, kid thing, blah, blah, blah. So I don't mind wrapping up early if that's...
Sure. If it's all right, I'd like to do extra special shout-outs if I can, because I have the floor. We have a little bit of time. Cool. So first shout out is to the Fedora infrastructure team, particularly Ralph Bean, Luke Mackin, and a lot of the folks over there who stood up FedMessage and have done a really good job of being extra responsive on that data grepper side of things. Super, super, super duper thank you for that. Also, gigantic thank you to Patrick. You pretty much always respond whenever the CommOps folks need anything, and I'm not sure if you're also a cyborg or not because of how productive you are. Good luck with the spam firefighting for sure. I mean, also thanks to Nirik, thanks to Kushal. I mean, just the whole entire Fedora infra team has been there for CommOps, and we work closely with those folks all the time. Big shout out to Mo Duffy, particularly for her stuff that she's been doing with Fedora design in regards to the Fedora Loves Python stuff. The design looked great. Everybody wants shirts. Everybody wants stickers. Everybody wants brochures. It was a huge hit at PyCon. You know, we looked super pro, wearing our shirts, having our brochures on the table, rocking the stickers. You know, it's a subtle thing, but having a cohesive brand makes a big difference for folks looking at us and saying, wow, Fedora is seriously legit. And having a continued presence at PyCon, not just in North America, but everywhere, you know, we made sure that, like, the sticker itself doesn't have any text on it, right? So that we can utilize that. And, like, this swag can end up going to other Python-focused events around the world. So thank you, Mismo. Thank you, Ryan Lurch. Thank you to the design team for helping to make everything happen with that. And then I want to shout out my team itself, right? Like Jay Flory, B, Skamath, Devyani, you know, all the folks in CommOps, Linux Modder, NB, all those folks who've been, you know, working to create this thing, right? Like CommOps did not exist. We've existed since about August as far as a mailing list is concerned. The CommBlog has existed since February. You know, this was not a sub-project until a few months ago, and I'm just so proud of all of the work that everybody is doing. Particularly also, I would be beside myself to not shout out Matt DM for, you know, helping to mentor a lot of the folks, including myself, just to get acquainted with the gigantic beast that is Fedora. It has been a crazy, crazy time just to wrap my head around all the different pieces and all the different gears that work. If I could, this will be like what I end with, but at PyCon, at the sprints, we were talking about like how to wrap our minds around like Fedora, and I should draw a picture or something, but I imagine Fedora within the FOSS community being like this giant set of towers of gears that are all stacked on top of each other, and each of the little upstreams, their gear ticks away at a certain ratio, and our job is to make sure that all of the gears, when they're moving, don't lock up or move too fast or too slow with the rest of the gears that exist within the stack. So that doesn't just mean like release schedules, that means community architecture, it means culture, it means so much. And in the impact of Fedora beyond Fedora itself is massively obvious to me, especially after attending huge conferences like FOSDEM and seeing the work that happens that resonates beyond our borders. So like, I can't stress enough like the amount of impact that these people and the work that everyone is doing here in Fedora has on Fedora itself, but it goes way beyond all of the stuff that we do every day. And I'm so thankful to be a part of this project and to have had this amazing experience of working on the CommOps team and learning about, you know, shipping this unbelievable ecosystem of gears that spins and turns and keeps the world going round. So thank you, everybody who's helped to do that.
Nice. Yes. What Remy said, I echo that. Also, of course, thank you very much, Remy, for the CommOps work you've done and for this presentation as well.
Likewise. I had a lot of help putting that together, too.
All right. And then with that, signing off. See everybody next week.